What happens when the world's third richest man decides to get married? Well, if you're Jeff Bezos, you basically turn an entire city into your personal wedding venue, fly in more private jets than world leaders use for the G7 summit, and spark protests that spread across international headlines. And before we dive into this insane story that's been unfolding in Venice over the past week, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we're about to expose some shocking details that mainstream media isn't telling you about this wedding. Picture this: 96 private jets descending on Venice in a single weekend. That's not a typo. While world leaders brought 67 jets to discuss global crises at the G7 summit, Jeff Bezos and Sanchez managed to attract even more aircraft for their 3-day wedding extravaganza. We're talking about so many jets that Venice's Marco Polo airport looked like a billionaire's parking lot. And get this, the environmental impact is so massive that even Greenpeace showed up with giant banners reading, "If you can rent Venice for your wedding, you can pay more tax." But that's just the beginning of this wild story. The Amazon founder didn't just have a wedding. He orchestrated what might be the most expensive and controversial celebration in modern history, with a price tag estimated between $47 and $56 million. This wasn't your average ceremony. To put that in perspective, Bezos spent more on 3 days of partying than most countries spend on entire diplomatic summits. The wedding planners, a boutique agency called Lanza and Balkina, reportedly made everyone involved sign strict NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, to keep the details secret, but you can't hide 96 private jets or shut down half of Venice without people noticing. Now here's where things get really interesting. While protesters flooded Venice's streets with no space for Bezos banners, inside the exclusive venues, a guest list that reads like a Forbes billionaire index was partying it up. We're talking about Bill Gates, Leonardo DiCaprio, Oprah Winfrey, Kim Kardashian, and about 200 other ultra-wealthy individuals whose combined net worth reportedly exceeded $435 billion. That's right, nearly $500 billion of wealth concentrated in one Italian city for a weekend. Paparazzi caught Kim Kardashian arriving in a vintage Versace snake print dress from 1994, while her sister Kendall wore Roberto Cavalli and Kylie stunned in Dolce & Gabbana. Even their mom Kris Jenner was spotted taking photos of her daughters on water taxis like any proud mother. If your average mom traveled by private gondola, that is. The security alone was like something out of a Hollywood movie. Former US Marines patrolling canals, jet skis monitoring the waters, and entire sections of Venice basically shut down to the public. Local residents couldn't even access certain parts of their own city. One protester, Marta Sotoriva, put it perfectly when she said Bezos was treating Venice like his private ballroom, as if the citizens weren't even there. The security was so tight that when guests arrived at events, they had to surrender their phones. Apparently, even among billionaires, Bezos wanted to control the narrative. But here's the part that's really got people talking. Sanchez apparently had 27 different outfits prepared for the wedding festivities. 27! While most brides stress over finding one perfect dress, the former TV journalist and helicopter pilot was doing costume changes like she was headlining a Vegas show. There was reportedly a Great Gatsby-themed party, a pajama party, and even a foam party. Because apparently when you're marrying someone worth $244 billion, one celebration just isn't enough. Fashion insiders are saying her outfits alone could have cost over $1 million, featuring custom pieces from Dior, Versace, and other luxury houses. One outfit was even reportedly stolen before the event, adding drama to an already over-the-top celebration. The actual ceremony took place at the Basilica of San Giorgio Maggiore, a stunning 16th century church on its own private island. Matteo Bocelli, son of the legendary Andrea Bocelli, was brought in to perform. Every single water taxi in Venice, and we're talking about hundreds of them, was reserved for the event. 5 of the city's most luxurious hotels, including the Aman where rooms start at €4,000 per night, were completely booked out. The gritty palace, where George Clooney stayed for his wedding, was turned into Kardashian headquarters. The St. Regis, the Danieli, and the Cipriani, every 5-star property in Venice was essentially transformed into Bezos Wedding Central. Now, Italy's tourism ministry is claiming this wedding generated a $1.1 billion economic impact for Venice. Yes, you heard that right, over $1 billion, mostly from what they call media visibility. But locals aren't buying it. They're pointing out that while Bezos donated $3.5 million to local charities, which sounds generous until you realize that's literally pocket change for him, the disruption to their daily lives and the message it sends about their city being for sale to the highest bidder is worth far more than any economic boost. The donations went to Karela for studying the Venice Lagoon, UNESCO's local office, and Venice International University. But critics argue this is just billionaire guilt money. Here's a mind-blowing fact that really puts this in perspective. The wedding cost Bezos approximately 0.02% of his net worth. For the average American, that would be like spending $250 on your entire wedding. That's less than what most people spend on their wedding cake alone. One news outlet calculated that for various professions, this would be equivalent to a teacher spending $15 or a nurse spending $20 on their wedding. Meanwhile, surveys show that half of regular Americans go into debt just to pay for their weddings. The environmental activists had a field day with this one. Those 96 private jets? They produced more carbon emissions in one weekend than some small cities produce in a month. Environmental experts estimate each private jet flight produces 2 tons of CO2 per hour. Multiply that by 96 jets making round trips, and we're talking about carbon emissions equivalent to what 500 average Americans produce in an entire year. And this is happening in Venice, a city that's literally sinking due to climate change and over-tourism. The protesters even floated a life-size dummy of Bezos down the Grand Canal on a giant Amazon box. Talk about making a statement. But wait, it gets even more bizarre. When photos started circulating on social media showing dozens of private jets lined up on a runway, supposedly from the Bezos wedding, fact-checkers discovered the images were actually from a 2015 boxing match in Las Vegas. The real jets that flew into Venice were spread across multiple airports: Venice, Treviso, and Verona, because there literally wasn't enough space for all of them in one place. Airport workers reported it was the busiest private jet traffic they'd ever seen, surpassing even the Venice Film Festival. The guest list itself tells a story of how the ultra-wealthy operate. Sam Altman from OpenAI flew in, a man worth at least $2 billion. The Kardashian-Jenner clan arrived in force, with Kim's $1.7 billion fortune from her Skims empire adding to the wealth concentration. Even political figures like Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner made appearances, blurring the lines between business, entertainment, and politics. Usher was spotted arriving by water taxi. Tom Brady made an appearance, and rumors swirled that Beyonce and Jay-Z were invited, though they weren't photographed at the event. What's particularly striking is the timing. This wedding happened just as Venice implemented new tourist taxes to try to control over-tourism. The city charges day trippers up to 10 euros just to enter the historic center, yet here was Bezos essentially renting out entire sections of the city for a private party. The message to regular tourists and locals couldn't be clearer. There are different rules for billionaires. Venice sees 30 million tourists annually cramming into a city of just 50,000 residents, and locals have been fighting for years to reclaim their city. The protests weren't just about jealousy or anti-wealth sentiment. Venetians have watched their city transform from a living community into what many call a Disneyland for the rich. Housing prices have pushed out local families. Traditional businesses have been replaced by luxury brands, and now even their public spaces can be privatized for the right price. The No Space for Bezos movement connected with similar protests across Europe against over-tourism and the commodification of historic cities. Behind all the glitz and controversy, there's also a love story. Bezos and Sanchez have been together since 2018, shortly after his $25 billion divorce from Mackenzie Scott. He proposed with a 30-carat pink diamond ring worth up to $5 million while vacationing in the south of France. They'd already thrown 2 engagement parties, one on Bezos' $500 million yacht and another at Barry Diller's Beverly Hills mansion. The yacht, named Kourou, is one of the world's largest sailing yachts and was spotted anchored near Venice during the festivities. But perhaps the most telling moment came when Venice's mayor, trying to defend the wedding, said he was ashamed of the protesters and hoped Bezos would still come despite the backlash. It perfectly captured the tension between economic interests and civic pride, between welcoming tourism and preserving local culture. The mayor argued Venice had hosted G7 summits and film festivals without issue, but critics pointed out those were public events, not private takeovers of the city. As the jets departed Venice and the celebrities returned to their regular lives of extreme wealth, the city was left to count both the money and the cost. Yes, local businesses made millions, hotels were booked solid, and restaurants saw record sales. But the precedent has been set. If you're rich enough, you can essentially rent a UNESCO World Heritage Site for your personal use. The Bezos wedding represents something bigger than just one couple's big day. It's become a symbol of wealth inequality, environmental irresponsibility, and the commodification of culture. When one person can casually spend what amounts to a rounding error in their fortune to shut down parts of a historic city, it raises serious questions about the world we're creating. In the end, Jeff Bezos got his fairy tale wedding in one of the world's most romantic cities. Sanchez got to wear her 27 outfits. The celebrities got their Instagram moments. Venice got its billion-dollar economic impact, but at what cost? As one protester's sign read, "Venice is not Disneyland, but for one weekend, for the right price, apparently it can be." If this story shocked you as much as it shocked us, hit that like button and subscribe for more exclusive content about how the ultra-wealthy really live. And comment below, do you think cities should allow billionaires to essentially privatize public spaces for private events? Let us know your thoughts.